Episode 1, Shadow of the Ridge, Alabama Cryptids, The Thing in the Alabama Swamp. It was late August of 2009, the kind of Alabama summer night where the air hangs thick and heavy, and the swamp never really goes quiet. This encounter happened just outside the town of Bayou La Batre, down near a stretch of marshland locals avoided after dark. The man who shared this story, Daniel, had lived there most of his life. He knew the sounds of the swamp better than he knew the streets of town. That's how he knew something was wrong that night. Daniel had gone out around 10:30 p.m. to check crab traps he'd left earlier that afternoon. The tide had shifted, and he didn't want to lose his catch. He grabbed a flashlight, climbed into a small aluminum boat, and pushed off into the dark water. The only sounds were frogs, insects, and the slow slap of water against the hull. At first, about 20 minutes into the trip, he noticed the frogs stopped. Not gradually, all at once. If you've ever been near swamp country, you know how loud frogs can get. When they go silent, it means something big is nearby. Daniel thought maybe it was an alligator. That wasn't unusual. But then he heard something that didn't fit. A heavy splash. Not the quick slide of an alligator entering water. This sounded like something stepping into it. Slow. Deliberate. He swept his flashlight across the waterline, expecting to see the ridged back of a gator slipping beneath the surface. Instead, the beam caught movement along the muddy bank. Something tall. Too tall. At first, Daniel thought it was a tree stump or driftwood standing upright. But then, it moved again, shifting its weight like a person. He said the figure stood at least 7 feet tall, maybe taller. Its body was thick and broad, covered in what looked like dark hair matted down from the humidity. The flashlight beam didn't reflect eyes the way it would from an animal. Instead, the creature turned its head slowly toward him. That's when he noticed the smell. Rotten. Like swamp mud mixed with something dead. Daniel froze, gripping the flashlight so tight his knuckles turned white. He said the creature didn't act startled like wildlife usually does. It didn't run. It didn't hide. It just watched him. Then it stepped forward, 1 foot into the water. The splash was deep and heavy, far heavier than any man he'd ever heard stepping into shallow water. Daniel backed his boat slowly, barely daring to breathe. The motor wasn't running yet, and he didn't want to make noise. That's when the creature made a sound. Not a roar, not a growl. It was more like a low, deep rumble that turned into a strange, broken howl. He described it as something between a wounded animal and a human voice trying to scream underwater. That sound echoed across the marsh, bouncing off the trees and disappearing into the distance. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the creature turned and moved into the reeds, not crashing through them, gliding through them. Daniel said that's what bothered him most, the way something that big could move so quietly. He didn't wait to see if it came back. He pulled the motor cord once, twice. On the third pull, the engine roared to life, shattering the silence of the swamp. He sped back toward shore, not looking behind him even once. But halfway back, he heard another sound. A splash. Behind him. Close. Too close. He risked a glance over his shoulder, for just a second. And in the beam of his flashlight, bouncing across the water, he saw movement again. Something large, wading through the shallows parallel to his boat. Keeping pace. Not swimming. Walking. Daniel made it back to shore, and didn't return to that stretch of swamp for months. When he finally did, he noticed something strange along the muddy bank near his traps. Footprints. Huge. Longer than his forearm. Deep impressions pressed into the mud, spaced far apart, like something with an enormous stride. He didn't take pictures. Didn't measure them. At the time, he just wanted to leave. Years later, after hearing stories from others in the area, Daniel learned he wasn't alone. Locals had talked for decades about a creature said to roam the swampy regions near the coast. something sometimes referred to as the Alabama white thing, though Daniel insisted what he saw wasn't white at all. It was dark, massive, and very real. To this day, he refuses to go onto the water alone after sunset, because once you've seen something that shouldn't exist, the swamp never feels the same again.